Hello and welcome back to the Okanagan Reader. I'm your host, Jim Bowering. Let's get the subscribing and liking out of the way right away. Please subscribe. Please like. It helps. And I need all the help I can get. Now in Chapter 19, Elgin and Buzzard start working together. Elgin uses his sense of rightness and Buzzard uses his deep, penetrating concentration. They make a great team. They go to the flashball court, where Elgin shows Buzzard how he plans to fix it. And they go together to try out for the flashball team, the Harriers. Quite an education for Elgin. Here we go then.
Chapter 19. Elgin plays flashball. Elgin's first day of work was very productive, even if it was pretty much more of the same thing. Buzzard was checking the work assigned by Stanton to the main crew of engineers who worked in another office. The pencil pool. Stanton calls them the pencil pool, said Buzzard. Good engineers, no surprises. Elgin could see that in the papers he was examining. The work was good, neat and complete, but uninteresting. There was nothing that would be called daring. Pretty reliable, then. Very reliable, very dependable, predictable, Buzzard said, nodding, except one. One's not predictable. Oh, said Elgin, looking at the papers. Who? Not here. Buzzard seesawed a hand, a dubious look on his face. Nothing lately, comes and goes. Unreliable? Elgin was shocked. To him, the goal of an engineer was to be accurate and consistent. The idea of being anything less left him indignant. Me too, said Buzzard. Bad work, bad engineer. He had a stern, disapproving look on his face. But Stanton wants him. Says, I want him to surprise me. I know he's wrong most of the time, but once in a while he's surprisingly right. Elgin said, Ah, I see. You see? You get it? You see? Yes, I think. Buzzard was looking at him skeptically, but also hopefully, as if Elgin might be able to make him see. He tried. He's got a whole crew that can churn out things for him, and he's got you to scrutinize their work. Buzzard nodded. That's exactly how things should be. Everything will get done this way. That's covered, so he can afford to have one wild card. Buzzard scowled, trying to get it, then shook his head emphatically. Mistakes, he said. Mistakes, mistakes. But he's got you to catch those, and he's got the gamble that he'll get that one beautiful surprise. Buzzard scowled some more. He tried hard, but he just couldn't see past the bad work. He shrugged at Elgin, looking defeated, as if accepting that some things were forever beyond him. Don't feel bad, Buzzard. Don't feel bad. Stanton wants him, Boss Stanton. Yeah, he's the boss. He's got his reasons, right? Elgin gets it. Elgin knows. Buzzard had to settle for pragmatism. It's best. Best. If it will help, I'll check the guy's work and pass it straight to Stanton. He could at least remove some of the irritant. No, my job. Buzzard looked resigned, but proud. My responsibility. Okay. They went back to work. Elgin was scanning submissions and separating them into a good pile and a bad pile. Buzzard was checking papers too, but he was concentrating on the ones from Elgin. The bad pile he put aside for later, and the good ones he subjected to his penetrating analysis. He muttered, We'll see. Now we'll see. It didn't take Elgin very long to work through what was there. The only thing that slowed him down was finding out that he could get tired if he did too many in a row. He discovered the problem when he found himself looking at a paper and thinking it was blank. Buzzard, he said, here's a blank one. Buzzard glanced at it. Not blank, it's not blank, he said, and went back to work. Surprised, Elgin looked again and found he was right. But when he tried to parse it, it went blank again. Some experimentation showed him that it wasn't the paper, it was his mind. That's when he realized that it was a symptom of fatigue. Now that he noticed it, he could feel something like a ghostly cramp in the area that he associated with his talent. He stuck the paper to the table, peeled off the stool, and flew over to the galley. He made some coffee, put a cup next to Buzzard, who grunted acknowledgement, and cruised around the room sipping at his. There wasn't much to look at, so he found himself covertly watching Buzzard who was assessing his work. He realized that he was feeling a bit anxious about it. He had grown up with his talent, maturing in concert with it, and almost took it for granted. He never questioned its assertions, simply accepting them. But now, with Buzzard subjecting his work to an unprecedented level of scrutiny, he felt a bit insecure. Finally, Buzzard put the paper aside. "All done," he said, and Elgin's heart skipped. "All 5, Elgin held his breath. "All good." Elgin sighed in relief. Buzzard looked at him and said, "Elgin knows." Then he took the 5 papers he had examined 5 times apiece, papers that Elgin had already passed as good, and put them on the pile that would go to Stanton. To Elgin's intense pleasure, he then took the rest of Elgin's good pile and added them directly to the Stanton pile. He was pronouncing that Elgin's judgment was adequate. He grinned at Elgin. "Elgin knows," he said. That took care of that. As far as Buzzard was concerned, he had carried out Stanton's instructions. Elgin's talent was the real thing and could be trusted. Now he could get back to his regular work. When Buzzard started in on his pile of papers, Elgin flew over and offered to help by taking some. He didn't have much left himself, and thought they could speed things up if they evened out the load. Buzzard turned him down. "My job," he said. "My responsibility." Elgin went back to his little pile and was pleased to find that he could see them again. His talent, whatever it was, seemed to be rested enough. He had no further problems with what remained and soon had everything separated into 2 piles. He still put them down for Buzzard's attention. He didn't feel it was his place yet to put them straight onto Stanton stacks. He must have done something that communicated his restiveness right through the shell of concentration surrounding Buzzard, because the lanky body straightened up, and he was treated to a deep scowl. Buzzard said, "You have to find something to do. Find something to do." He waved at the papers still covering the table. "Read those. Read them all." As he descended back into his work, he said, "Figure out what we're doing. What we're doing." That was something Elgin could do gladly. He'd had a quick look at some of it earlier, but then they'd got into the submissions from the pencil pool. He smiled at the image of a pencil pool, complete with a sprightly soundtrack as he browsed the scattered papers, hoping for something to catch his eye. He wasn't sure how much later it was when Buzzard's voice brought him back to the present. He was saying something about lunch, and his stomach was growling its emphatic agreement, but he had no idea what time it was, or how long he'd been lost in the fascinating plan taking shape here. Bringing 2 comets together, one 60 kilometers in diameter and roughly spherical, the other 40 and less so, and fusing them into one was a fantastic idea. The papers on this table were taking the idea and distilling it into numbers. They broke an awesome concept into manageable parts, showed how the parts would each be executed, and how the parts would work together. Elgin's mind was right inside the contact zone when Buzzard spoke. He could see the materials of the 2 comets being processed into the structural elements that would bind them together, while they were slowly inched together, closing the resulting gap. It was a grand and beautiful symphony of the many smaller parts evolving in unison. Not only had he figured out what they were doing, as ordered, he was able to visualize it in realistic detail. "Did you figure out what we're doing? What we're doing?" asked Buzzard, pulling him toward the door. "Time for lunch," he said. "Past time. Way past." Elgin didn't say much. He just let himself be pulled along while he negotiated his way back to this reality. The second day was completely different. Working together, Elgin and Buzzard had made short work of it the first day, and there weren't enough new papers coming in to justify hanging around the shop. They left Stanton grumbling about paperwork and set off for the flashball arena. Once there, they flew around the outside of the big ball, Elgin gesticulating as he tried to explain. "The stress lines, you see? They're broken by the opening." He tried to indicate it with sweeping gestures. Buzzard wasn't seeing any lines. All he saw was the big beautiful ice stadium that was designed by his boss. "Stanton's work," he said. "Stanton." "I know," said Elgin. "Stanton saw the lines. He said he wants me to fix it." "Yes, he told me. Let Elgin fix the ball. See how he does." Buzzard didn't look happy about it, but if that's what his boss wanted, then it would be done. Even though he couldn't see the lines or sense where they were broken, Buzzard could understand it. He could see how the form had to be smoothly transferred from the spherical shell of the ball to the struts that would anchor it to the walls. Once he saw that, he was able to help Elgin visualize a plan. They flew all around the ball, outside and in, taking measurements and trying to imagine what it would look like when it was done. Elgin was at the very center of the sphere, slowly turning, fixing the picture in his mind. While he was occupied, Buzzard entertained himself by pretending he was playing flashball. He swooped and soared in all parts of the space, pantomiming catching and throwing the ball. The graceful flow of his long, willowy body made it look more like art than sport. His usual intense concentration had him so focused that it was a few minutes before he was aware that Elgin was watching him. He stopped immediately, flustered. "Don't stop on my account, that was great." Elgin was sorry to have embarrassed his friend. "Did you ever play flashball?" "No, no good, too gawky." Buzzard's mind seemed to go inwards to his memories. "You're too gawky, you can't play." "You're not gawky at all. You're very graceful. Who told you that?" "Everybody. Kids, other kids. You can't play with us." Buzzard looked really glum. "Father." "Well, they were wrong, Buzzard. I don't know. Maybe you were clumsy as a child or something, but you're a natural flyer now." "Too late now, too late." "I don't know about that." Elgin moved toward the exit, and they headed out. "Stanton says I should play flashball. What do you think about that?" "Stanton said it. What do you think?" And Elgin knew. He knew Stanton was right. He had known the first time he heard it, but it was too personal for that. If it had been about anything else, his instinct would have expressed itself. But it didn't work that way when it was about him. Only by talking about it in this removed way could his senses do their usual thing. "I think I should look into it," he said. "You're going to play flashball?" "I'll give it a try and see what happens." "But you're still—" Buzzard looked at him, at the way he was flying, and finished gently. "Learning. You're just learning." Elgin laughed. "You mean I fly like a fish walks?" "No," said Buzzard. "Fish don't walk. Most fish. Some fish walk, not really walking." Then he saw Elgin grinning at him. "Oh, I get it. Fly like a fish walks, fish walks." He got that delightful smile that Elgin would come to love, and he let loose a satisfying laugh. "So how about it?" Elgin asked. "If a flying fish like me can do it, do you think you might give it a try?" They'd left the ball and were entering the corridor for the flight back to the shop. Buzzard didn't speak for a long time. Then he finally said, "Talk to Stanton. I'll ask Stanton about it. Ask Stanton." He was quiet the rest of the way back. When they got there, Stanton's door was closed. Buzzard looked really disappointed and made 2 aimless circuits of the room before settling on his stool. He grabbed some papers and picked up his sharp-right. He was just beginning to work on them when Elgin got to the table with coffees. Leaving one for Buzzard, Elgin took the other around to his place. He checked some slots and opened a few doors and drawers before he found some blank perma-paper. He spent the rest of the day working up the plans for the alterations to the ball. He barely registered it when Buzzard went into Stanton's office, and again when he came out. But there was no ignoring him for long. He was fitfully flying from place to place, and Elgin could feel him looking. He lifted his head and said, "How'd it go?" Buzzard let it come bubbling out. "I'm going to try it. Try it out. Give it a try, Buzzard. You might like it." He swooped around the room with his trademark sinuosity. "Try it out." "That's great. We'll go together. Maybe we can be on the same team." "Go together, same team." Buzzard caught and relayed an imaginary flashball. "Go tonight." Elgin was just getting back into his work when he caught that. "Tonight?" he asked. "Go tonight, after work." Buzzard grinned, sharing the excitement. "Stanton is setting it up, old friend." He swung back into his game. Tonight. That seemed a little sudden, but it didn't take Elgin long to get used to the idea. If you're going to do it, you might as well do it, he thought. He watched his friend, smiling at his antics, then went back to the plans. It took him most of the rest of the day to put together a first draft. As he finished each part, he handed it to Buzzard for his scrutiny. Buzzard was surprised at first that he wouldn't want to give it straight to Stanton. "You're not in the pencil pool," he said. "No, but I want it to be good, and it's harder for me to tell when it's my own work. and I know you'll spot anything I miss." So Buzzard took the papers and looked them over, but only twice, not 5 times, twice. He put the papers in a neat stack and took the top one, not in the pencil pull. They worked together this way, not saying much but cementing their young friendship. Each one was lucky enough to respect the other's ability and to see it as an asset rather than a threat. Stanton, standing quietly in his doorway, was deeply gratified to see their natural interaction. 2 young men who seemed so different superficially, one very much the ideal in his form, an athletic mesomorph, very close to the norm in most measures, slightly better where it mattered. The other very far from the norm, an ectomorph whose dimensions were far from average, who could easily be dismissed for his appearance and for his behavior. Looked at in one way, they would seem to be incompatible, to have nothing in common. But when they were put together, they hit it off right away. Stanton congratulated himself for his lucky hunch. Just before the end of the day, Elgin finished. He added the last paper to Buzzard's stack and launched himself for a little fly around the room to get the kinks out. He saw Buzzard straighten his stack unconsciously without breaking his concentration, while continuing to check the work. Elgin decided it would be a while, and because he didn't want to hover, he began to practice what he imagined would be flashball moves. It was quite a while, or it seemed it anyway. Elgin tried to be casual, finding things to do while he waited, but he found himself glancing in Buzzard's direction every minute or so. When his friend finally sat up and said, "Both done, all done," he was over there right away. "How is it?" he asked. "All done," said Buzzard, "all good." "All good? Good enough?" "All good, F.A." "Oh, right," said Elgin, "F.A. So it's not perfect, but good enough for a first draft." "Good enough. Show the boss." Buzzard flew over to the galley. Over his shoulder he called, "Flashball practice pretty soon." "Oh, right. Flashball." They had less than an hour. He scooped up the papers, noting that Buzzard had kept them in perfect order, and headed for Stanton's office. He found the door open, but didn't feel that comfortable yet, so he stood in the entrance and rapped for attention. "Come in. The door's open," called Stanton, and Elgin ventured inside. "I've got the drawings for the flashball court," he said. Stanton was behind a desk facing the door, so Elgin kicked and drifted over. It was a large office, a good 10 meters square, and of course the ceiling was high. Looking around, Elgin noticed that it was quite bare. There were no pictures or other decorations on the walls, no furniture other than the desk on the floor. On the desk, besides papers and the tools and equipment he needed to do his job, Stanton had one object that wasn't strictly utilitarian. It looked like a pale yellow blown glass sphere. Elgin wondered if it was meant to represent the large ice sphere he was working on. That gave him a little chill of worry. If Stanton thought so highly of his creation that he honored it in this way, maybe Elgin was being cavalier in wanting to alter it. "How did it turn out?" Stanton asked, reaching to take the papers. "Pretty well, I think." Elgin handed them over, then just hovered where he was, since there wasn't anywhere to sit. "Did you get Buzzard to look at it?" "Yes, definitely." "Good. What did he have to say?" "Good enough," said Elgin with a smile. "Good enough for what?" "Good enough considering it's a first draft, I think." "All right, I'll look at these later, when I can do them justice." He put the papers on his desk. "For now, why don't you give me the gist of it? Paint me a picture." "Okay," said Elgin, and he began to describe the changes that would be made. Currently it was a hollow sphere with a half-meter thick shell of ice. It was 100 meters in diameter and had one hole 3 meters across where the players could get in and out. The plan was to attach the sphere to the walls of the gallery with 2 hollow tubes of ice, one at the present entrance and another directly opposite. The joints between the ball and the struts would be curved, smoothly transitioning from one to the other. As well as being anchors, the tubes would be the access points for the players. They would be 25 meters long and 15 wide, larger than they needed to be for passage, but big enough that they wouldn't clash with the size of the ball. The tubes were to have 2 lenticular-shaped openings each in their sides near the gallery walls. Their shape allowed the lines of stress to flow smoothly, and they permitted access to the interior of the tube. From there the players would fly the length of the passage to a small door in the wall of the ball. From the outside, it looked as if the sphere curved into the tube, but inside it was obvious that it was continuous. Elgin stopped sculpting the air with his hands to say, "With two entrances, the teams could enter the ball from opposite sides." "No," said Stanton. "It's a good idea, but it would conflict with the ethos of the game." "Oh," said Elgin. That hadn't occurred to him. He was just thinking that having opposite entrances would be symbolic of the competition. "Yes, this just kind of happened, and now it's almost like a tradition. The teams always enter and exit together. It's a sort of comradely good sport thing." "Oh," said Elgin. "Okay. That'll save us having to make openings in one strut anyway." "No," said Stanton. "Leave them in. It's good to have two exits, remember?" "Right, of course." Elgin smiled wryly. "Man, sometimes you get so involved in the details that you forget what you're doing. Do tell." "So the teams always enter and leave together. That's like," Elgin paused, "it's like they're really one team, kind of." "I never thought of it quite like that," said Stanton, "but I can see what you mean." "I mean, they're competing against each other during the game," Elgin demonstrated with his hands, "but it's kind of like they're competing together, too." He clasped them. "If you know what I mean." "I do get the idea," said Stanton, "but I'll have to think about it." Stanton began ushering him toward the door. "I'll have a look at the plans, and I'll let you know what I think tomorrow." He pushed him through the opening. "Don't you have flashball practice?" "Flashball practice?" He turned to go. "Wait, where?" "In the ball," his boss said, smirking. "There's usually an audience." "An audience? Wait, an audience at practice?" "Yes," said Stanton as he closed the door. "It's a very popular sport." Elgin felt panicky. He was barely ready to try the game. He knew he still flew clumsily, and he wasn't sure they would even want him on their team. They were probably just giving him a tryout as a favor to Stanton anyway. He was willing to go out and make a fool of himself because his boss thought it was a good idea, but in front of an audience? The idea bothered him, but not enough to change his plans. It faded as he was flying back to the ball, and he didn't think about it again until he entered the gallery and saw several hundred people milling about. That made him nervous again, and he was very self-conscious as he went past them toward the entrance. But then Buzzard called his name, and he saw him protruding from the opening, grinning and waving him on. That helped a lot. Now he felt more like he belonged here, and he flew the rest of the way with more of a sense of purpose. Buzzard kept encouraging him all the way into the ball, then turned and led him toward a knot of people about 10 meters in. They turned as Elgin approached, and stared openly at him. "This is Elgin," Buzzard announced as they approached. "Elgin." He reached out and pulled him forward. "Told you about him. Said he was coming. Elgin." He turned toward one of them. "Rita," he said. "Captain Rita, Coach Rita." Then he indicated the man next to her. "Lewis, this is Lewis." Buzzard gave Elgin a glance. Lewis and Rita, Rita and Lewis. Somehow Elgin understood that there was a connection between them. "Don't know the rest yet, don't know." "There's plenty of time for introductions later," said Rita, proffering her hand. "Nice to meet you, Elgin." Lewis also came forward and shook his hand, and Elgin exchanged nods with the rest. "Stanton's told me a bit about you," said Rita. "I understand you're a new waker." "Yes," said Elgin, "completely new." "Well, don't worry," she said. "We'll take it easy on you at first. Before you know it, you'll almost be keeping up with the rest of us." "Thank you," said Elgin, looking at the rest of the team doing drills in the middle of the ball. They weren't even going at it hard, and he couldn't imagine keeping up with them, even almost. "Okay," she said. "Welcome to the Harriers. Now let's get to work." She clapped her hands. "We've only got the ball for an hour, so get out there and show me what you've got." Elgin was going to ask what he was supposed to do, but Buzzard grabbed him and dragged him out there. "Come on," he said. "We just copy what they're doing. Just copy." Elgin was the worst flyer there. That didn't surprise him, but the degree of his badness did. He had thought he was beginning to get the hang of it, but being out here with people who really could fly disabused him of that conceit. Compared to him, even Buzzard, gawky as he was supposed to be, looked good. He couldn't keep up in the sprints, made a flapping mess of the turns, missed nearly every ball that was thrown to him, and he couldn't hit a stationary target, much less a moving one. He spent the entire hour trying to catch up. This was supposed to be taking it easy on him? He was tired well before it was over, out of breath soon after it started. But every time he messed up, he set his jaw and threw himself back into it, except when he wasn't able to because he was laughing at himself. Captain Rita smiled. Stanton was right about this, Elgin. When it was finally over, they all gathered around her for her appraisal. "That was pretty good," she said. "You're finally coming together as a team." Everyone was catching their breath, so they just listened. Everyone except Elgin. He didn't know if he would ever catch his breath again. He was panting. If there were gravity, he would be bent over with his hands on his knees. She said to him, "Elgin, I was particularly impressed by you today." He wasn't able to reply, so he looked at her, dumbfounded. "You're obviously not as good as the rest of us," she said with a wink. That brought some laughter from his teammates and a rueful smile from him. "But I admired your effort, and the way you stuck with it." There was a solid course of agreement to that. Elgin nodded and weakly waved a hand. Rita then turned to Buzzard. "When I first saw you," she said, "I wasn't too sure why Stanton sent you over here." Buzzard was listening with his trademark focus. "Elgin, sure. He may be a new waker, but he has a flyer's physique. But you're built all wrong. You can't make any of the tight turns that we need in this game." Buzzard's face was starting to fall. "But watching you work out, I see what Stanton must be thinking. You're so smooth. You flow as much as you fly. I'm already thinking about how we can use that." She looked at both of them and nodded to the rest of the team. "We have 2 new members, Buzzard and Elgin." There was a murmur of welcome and some applause. As they were breaking up, she fell in with the 2 of them. "So," she said, "what's this I hear about you changing the ball?" While they flew out of there, Elgin and Buzzard tried to explain. Elgin had almost caught his breath by then, but Buzzard got too impatient and kept interrupting. He even got in on the hand-waving, trying to explain the lines of stress.